Welcome to Valencia Eurosport live from the first round of the FIA GT Championship for the year 2000. This is how we left you this afternoon after the first qualifying session. The car that was fastest in the practice sessions, untimed on Friday, fastest again against the watch. Julian Bailey setting the time. He shares the number 14, the first of the list of storms, with his teammate from last year's British GT Championship, Jamie Campbell-Walter. Good afternoon, I'm Martin Haven. We've got another 45 minutes of qualifying live on Eurosport this afternoon before we go back to Portugal for the motocross. And you can see the top of the timesheets dominated by Jaguar V12 engine cars. The two fastest cars in practice, the two Lister Storms. And there's Julian Bailey. He's got another set of tyres now, a set of soft, well, medium compound Michelin tyres. They're using the harder of the compounds, or the hardest of the three compounds Michelin have available this weekend for their race tyre. That's already put away, ready to start tomorrow's race. And Julian Bailey has a set of soft tyres. He said, I may use them. We haven't got anything to prove. We're already on top of the timesheets. It depends what the cars behind us do. But there he is. He just couldn't resist going out and having a play on the front of the queue to leave the pits. And cars will be going out in just 2 or 3 minutes' time, and with the sky starting to cloud over 300 or 400 kilometres down the road in Barcelona. It was raining during practice and qualifying for the Sports Racing World Cup earlier this afternoon, although we had bright sunshine and high temperatures here in Valencia. Now there's a degree of cloud cover, certainly this later afternoon, 5:30 now, the temperature dropping down considerably. So the ambient is below 20 degrees now. Oh dear, what a shame. Never mind, those of you who may just have got back from Thruxton in Great Britain, where the British GT Championship has opened its season with qualifying this afternoon. I understand rain, sleet, hail and sunshine, missing only the plague of frogs for the traditional start to the British Racing Series. Well, there is the car, and indeed the driver combination rather than the car itself, that dominated the British Championship last year. Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter. Lister winning not just the GT1 series with Bailey and Campbell-Walter, but also the GT2 series as well. And they are running GT2 cars here in the FIA series and a GT2 car in the British series. Well, one of the drivers from last year is also down the road. Torkild Turing, the Danish driver, pairing up, of course, with John Nielsen in the first privately owned Paynos, the Dengla Arbis, the Danish equivalent of Exchange and Mart, sponsoring that car. Jason Watt's long-time sponsor, of course, in Formula 3000. And John Nielsen and Torkild Turing fastest until the rains came in Barcelona. They're on Pirelli tyres, the first of the Paynoses ever to run on Pirelli tyres. They've always been a Michelin team up until now in works hand. And the Goodyear wet weather tyre was clearly the thing to have in Barcelona in qualifying. So the front of the grid for the Sports Racing World Cup, which you'll be able to see on Wednesday night, incidentally, on Eurosport. Gianni Lavaggi, Nicola Filiberti in their Ferrari on pole, from Bernard and Collard in the Dams Run Cadillac. Christian Glasel and Ralph Kelleners in the Lola, run by the Kramer brothers in third place. Christian Pescatori's Ferrari, the JBGS car, the team that are defending their championship, the number one machine, is in fourth place. He shares that with David Terrier. And Nielsen and Turing, the first run for a privately owned Paynos Spider, in fifth position. Well, enough of that. Let's have a look as now the cars are going out on the circuit here for the first of what we think will be a quicker session. There is one of the cars that had been causing some of the trouble for drivers during the earlier practice session, the number 10 Viper, and that is one of 3 cars owned by Paul Belmondo, and that Belmondo competition car entered for Guy Martinol and Jean-Claude Lanier, and that was doing a degree of gyration, it has to be said, in the earlier sessions. You can see the officials checking the markings on the tyres here to make sure that nobody's using tyres they shouldn't, didn't ought to. Most teams will now have got their race tyres put away, except for Chamberlain Engineering. I'm afraid Hugh Chamberlain's drivers rather upseated themselves. The number 2 car had a set of tyres on it. They're only going to do 3 or 4 laps, rub them in for the race, and then they'd be perfect. That was the hard set of Michelins. They've got a medium set of Michelins. Unfortunately, Tony Siler spun the car on his final lap on the tyres before putting them away to start the race on. So the number 2 Chamberlain Viper is going to have to start on soft compound tyres. That shouldn't be a problem. Julian Bailey now on soft compound tyres as the field streams out behind him, as he's the first car out of the pits and will be the first to cross the timing beams to start a quick lap. Unfortunately, he's got an awful lot of traffic out on the circuit. There's practically nothing left in the pits at all. Indeed, there is nothing left in the pits at all. Every single car on the timing screens is out of the pit lane. Well, Julian Bailey, the man who was quickest in the practice session, and the qualifying sessions so far have been led by him as well. So Friday was good for him, Saturday better, and Julian and Jamie professing themselves to be very comfortable indeed with the balance on the Lister Storm. He says, we've got a really good race car, and we're just going to go out and have a bit of fun this afternoon. I said, are you going to let Jamie have a go on the tyres? Not a chance. He said, 20 years ago I might have done. Now he said, no, I just want to go out and have fun on them. So Julian Bailey with the number 10 Viper behind him. That's one of the three Belmondo cars, as I said. The third of those, incidentally, Paul Belmondo and Vincent Voss, is going to be a real challenge to the two Lister Storms. And here is the second one. That is Nicholas Springer, the German driver, at the wheel of that. The morning running was done by Peter Hardman, and Carlos Palau is the third driver in the number 15 car, the Texaco Haveline sponsored car. The Adidas Newcastle United colours on the 14 car, of course, long associated with the effort of Lawrence Pierce and the Lister Racing crew. A few stories to rattle off as we go through this 45 minutes from this morning, and we will get through those hopefully when we see the cars responsible or the relevant vehicles. It was pretty quiet though for the Lister Storms. Julian Bailey just saying really the difficulty was getting a clear lap, not necessarily just because of a lot of cars on the track, but also because of a few cars off the track, and somebody has already gone off in front of our commentary positions here on the in the middle section of the infield circuit, and done a bit of damage as well. It looks as though he's had an impact with something, or the left rear has dropped off, and I'm not quite sure which it may be. Hopefully the cameras will pick it up from a different angle, because the left rear corner is what we want to be looking at. And yeah, sure enough, there's not much in there, is there? Big wheel arch and a hub. At least he's getting a talking to from one of the marshals to make sure he's okay, but that's going to be a bit of dragging out. The 22 car in 18th place after qualifying, that's the Viets. And they are newcomers to the championship, Franz and Nico Viets from Germany, running their own car, or their own team to run their own car. Julian Bailey, as we saw, peeling off into the pits, the only car in the pits at the moment, so Julian has come in, I think, apart from the 53 Chereau car, which has been out, done one lap and come back in. That dropped a lot of oil in the morning or in the earlier afternoon session of qualifying here at Valencija. They split an oil line and they were working on that car quite a lot, so they're in the pits as well, possibly a repetition of that problem. 66 there, diving down the inside. That doesn't look like a GT2 Porsche, you may be thinking to yourself, and you'd be right, not just because the all-white colour scheme makes it look a little bit different. There's an identical road car in the paddock, incidentally, by the side of the Mack Racing Transporter, because this is the Mack car. And it looks almost completely identical, apart from the fact it's got stereo and carpets, to this GT3R racer. And this is the Frigerio Rapetti car. The two Italians in 21st place, Massimo Frigerio and Paolo Rapetti. How could they not be racing drivers with names like that? Italian names, I'm sorry, just always seem to be so much better suited to racing cars than anything else. Using a fair degree of curving and inch or two of grass there to make sure he got a nice apex. And he really is pushing very hard indeed, isn't he? Trail braking all over the place as he locks up that front wheel under cornering. The GT3R, for those of you that haven't come across it before, and in European racing you very probably won't have done, Porsche's car last year made its debut at Le Mans, first and second in class rather predictably, although it wasn't theoretically run by Porsche, it was, to all intents and purposes, a cloaked factory effort. This is their racer. They're not building a GT2 car, they're going with a GT3R, which this machine is an example of. Essentially, fundamentally, it's the 996 shaped body shell, which is smelter with slightly less bulbous arches and cleaves the air better. And there is Tim Sugden about to take to the road in his version of the car, the 98. think I'm right in saying British GT champion with Steve O'Rourke, who he partners here. And there again, the 66 car blazing a trail with that locked up left, this time, front wheel. And the reason that they are so prone to locking fronts, incidentally, is that the rear tyre on the GT3R is only the same width as the front tyre on the GT2 version of Porsche's 911, so they do run considerably narrower tyres. They've got a reasonably wide track, but they run smaller tyres, they cleave the air better, and they are, well, Tim Sugden was saying, really a very, very chuckable car indeed. They really handle well. He said you don't have to worry about the car at all. You can just get on and look for your holes in traffic, or, you know, do the thinking that you need to do. He said, particularly for his partner Steve O'Rourke, who has never been a professional racing driver. He is, of course, the manager of the Pink Floyd rock group. It's a very, very comfortable car to drive over a long distance, and it will be a long distance as well. These 3-hour races, the GT3Rs, the NGT class cars, they're only going to need to make a single fuel stop. It's going to be narrow, the window of opportunity for getting it right, but they do believe they can make it without a yellow flag incident all the way on just one fuel stop, which is a bit of a disappointment. They were rather hoping to do 2 stints for Sugden and 1 for O'Rourke, but that looks as though they're going to have to do an hour and a half each. Last lap round for this car, the number 15 Vista Storm, with Springer at the wheel, was a 145.5, which would represent a considerable improvement on what they did earlier, but the earlier session 134.2. They're improving in this session, but not so far on their earlier session. And coming into the pits as well, I wonder if the track temperature has gone away just a little too much. Seems unlikely that it would drop so far down. It's hardly freezing cold outside. It's very much balmy shirt sleeve weather. Here's the number 1 machine for Hugh Chamberlain, Nianarim and Stephen Watson, the Portuguese and South African driving combination, and the yellow and red colours there tell us that it's Nianarim at the helm. They did hardly any laps at all this morning. Nianarim did about 4 laps and picked up a misfire on his quick lap, came in. They traced it, cured it, sent Stephen Watson out, and instead of being an occasional high-rev misfire, it became a persistent popping and banging, not running on the right number of cylinders type of misfire, which they never managed to cure in the entire session. It was finally traced to an injector connector wire that Hugh had said earlier in the morning, lads, you ought to have a look at that, that's going to break. And sure enough it did. Nianarim is being rather vigorous in his chase of the stopwatch with the number 1 fighter, and that won't particularly worry Hugh, as long as he doesn't invigorate himself into something firm, because these are not the race tyres for the number 1 car. Those are safely locked away. Nianarim, in common with most of the drivers that start the races in these GT class cars, the GT2 machines as we used to know them, we'll be doing 2 stints, and there'll be a middle stint, because these cars are going to need 2 stops for fuel, and they will, I think almost all of them, change tyres when they get the chance to do so in the pits. So Nianarim will start. This and the Estoril race coming up next on the calendar are very much home races for the Portuguese driver, of course, down on the Iberian Peninsula. And it will be Stephen Watson who will start at Silverstone and do the final stint, somewhere where, as an ex-British Formula 3 and an ex-Formula 3000 driver, he is considerably more at home than he is here at Valentia, after having done just 8 laps in the last day and a half. And there is a disappointment. I saw out of the window a moment or 2 ago the Ferrari was on track, but it is deep off in the gravel, and that is a big shame for them. They were in 15th place on the timesheets. They have been passed by a couple of cars, actually, by the number 77 Porsche, which is the Hans-Jörg Hofer, Luca Riccatelli, Hans Willems car. That's the Red Bull number 77 car, which we saw earlier on, rudely shouldering a GT2 Porsche off the track and into the gravel. Nianarim, number 1 car, 4th place, his best lap, 135.679, improves on the morning time of 136.768. So he has improved on the morning time. The Hofer and Riccatelli car, and I imagine Hans-Jörg Hofer, the owner of KTM Motorcycles, the majority shareholder of KTM Motorcycles, which part sponsor the car at least, is at the helm. He's improved on the morning time this afternoon. Bouchou and Goussoir Well, they're shown as having moved up the order, although they are shown as their morning time still being quicker. So I'm not quite sure how they've managed to do that, because nobody's been able to record a slower time this afternoon. There is Cornelius Oyser, the owner and mentor of his team, running, developing and otherwise trying to massage this Marcos LM600 Mantara into front-running shape with their Dunlop tyres in common with everybody else in the field. They've got one compound of tyre. It's a slick, it's dry, go race it is basically the message from Dunlop. So they don't have any soft tyres, but they had a furious overfueling problem yesterday in practice, which they managed to get rid of. And although he reckons to be 100 horsepower down on the Vipers, he's a bit disappointed that he's so far behind them in terms of speed on the tight corners. At least Corroyser can certainly give anybody a run for their money around here. 51, this is another of the NGT class cars, the GT3R Porsches. They all are, in fact, although it's not specifically just a class for those cars. They just happen to be the ones that are around at the moment. Michel Neugarten here in the first of the G-Force cars, Blue Coral Pennzoil Slick 50 sponsored machines. John Greasley's team, of course, racing in the British GT Championship for so many years. And Magnus Wallander and Jeff Lister in their Porsche 911 GT1 Evo last year, giving the Lister Storm GT1 machine a real run for its money at every race in the championship. Well, Corroyser being pushed back before he goes out. He's going to go and do a few laps on the tyres they've got for this afternoon, and then the plan is that Christian Van, who has done hardly any laps in the car, like Stephen Watson in the Chamberlain car we were just talking about, will go out and basically run around until the end of the session and try and get as many laps under his belt as he can. Let's talk about the car in picture. Let's talk about the number 1 machine again. Having a narrow squeeze with the 7 car. That's the Proton competition car of Gerald and his son Christian Reed. The 11 car back again with that Paul Belmondo Racing. This is Claude-Yves Gousselin and Boris de Richebourg. Not a sports car racing combination that immediately you would imagine, but Boris de Richebourg has certainly been showing a good turn of speed in this, his first real GT outing. Regular Eurosport viewers will have heard his name in connection with the Supernova Formula 3000 team over the last few years on Eurosport's live 3000 broadcasts, and he has now found himself a home in this French team. He is, of course, French-based and very much a Gallic flavour to the Belmondo racing outfit. Well, that's the way that it looks at the moment, just as it did when he left it this morning. The Lister Storms ahead of the Dutch Hazemans and Hart Viper, and then Nianram in 4th place ahead of Gousselin de Richebourg, the best of the Paul Belmondo cars. Well, the track is still alive with traffic. There's still much more to come. Stay with us. Welcome back to the circuit of the community of Valencia, this brand new racetrack in the southeast corner of Spain, just about 12 kilometers outside the city of Valencia itself, so about 10 miles from the Mediterranean, on the costa of Spain, basking in afternoon sunshine. Not basking too much, the driver of the 22 Porsche. We saw them go off a long while ago. You can see quite clearly why. That car being shared by Franz and Nico Wief from Germany, the father and son pairing. There's a pit shot here of one of the G-Force Porsches. Let's see if we can see which. Okay, well, it's the other one to the one that we were talking about earlier. This is the 50 car. Magnus Wallander sharing this car with Robert Nern. Robert Nern, Caterham racer and now sports car racer. Magnus Wallander, the Swede, who has been part of the G-Force team for the last couple of years. Very quick indeed. This combination has the potential of really being a NGT class front-running outfit. Coming out ahead of them, the Mack Racing car, car 66, the white car there, Massimo Frigiero and Paolo Rapetti. Corroyser and Christian Van's Marcos just gone across the line, picking up speed, but still not quite as quick as they were in the earlier session. This is a little slow-mo replay of the number 10 Belmondo car, which seems destined to get far more camera time than either of the other 2 Belmondo cars, largely because it spent a lot of time kicking up the dirt. Here is Corroyser, and looking very aggressive indeed in the middle section of the circuit here. Goes past the Mack Racing NGT machine, the GT3R Porsche. And Corroyser looking for those gaps in the traffic as he works his way round. He is pushing quite hard. He was just under 3 seconds off his fastest pace on his last lap, and he's met more traffic again, so that won't help him at all. The Horst Felbermeyer Senior and Junior driven car moves out of the way. That was the blue car there, the 28 RWS Motorsport car. Another father and son combination from Germany. Austria indeed in this case. And looks like Kors put a wheel off on the right hand side, doesn't it? The wheel arch there flapping a little bit loose. That won't worry him at all. Where he puts 4 wheels off and is heading backwards, that I think is the only time where he particularly is troubled about the odd errant wheel. Neat and tidy as he can be out of the final turn. He's coming thundering up to the line. Let's see what he does on this lap. 1:35.733. Well, that's a good improvement for him, and 1.906 from pole position. 1:35.733. He stays, in fact, in 5th place. He's found nearly 4/10 of a second though. Jürgen von Gartzen, he's sharing Franz Conrad's car this weekend. First time we've seen him in close-up, and I think probably the first time we've seen him on the track. And there is not the Ferrari, there is the car that is third on the timesheets. It's its first lap out of the pits. This is Mike Haseman's and David Hart's car, and this is a brand new team in terms of the FIA GT Championship. It's not a brand new car, it's an ex-Orica Viper, and it's just come back freshly rebuilt from the factory. So Hugo Schonach's operation, again refettling their own cars. This was raced in Daytona by Dominic Dupuis in the 24 hours. And we're going to see a little slow-mo replay of those sheets of flames stabbing out of the stubby little exhaust. What passes for an exhaust is almost open headers, such as the short length of exhaust on Korois's Marcos. Similar length of exhaust there, you can see it exiting under the front of the door on the Chrysler Vipers, and with those big engines up front, there's an awful lot of heat and unburnt fuel going through on the overrun. 25 car looking to push the tempo up a little bit, I think, and this may well produce Julian Bailey in a few minutes. Julian Bailey has done a couple of laps. He still sits on top of the timesheet in the 14 Lister Storm. The 15 car is still in second place, but he did say that if the Hasemans and Hart car, this red Dutch-entered, Dutch-owned, Dutch-operated Chrysler Viper, went quicker, then he would just go out and have another bit of a go. They've got a good race set up. They've got a set of race tyres they're quite happy with. Julian, of course, would be much happier to start from the front than to have some pesky red Viper holding him up. We're holding up the Viper at the moment, and into this long final corner. That's going to cost him dear. Is the number 7 car. That's Gerald Reed's car that he's sharing this year with his son Christian. 3.6 away, so you can see he was pretty close to the Julian Bailey time. He was only half a second away in the morning, but he's still gone no quicker at all than his own time. Franz Conrad there, as ever, driving the car, team owner, team boss, chief engineer. And he's saying either do up your suit so the sponsors can see it, or cut the engine. Couldn't quite work out which that was. Inside the Viper goes the 28 car. That was a bold dive down the inside. He was given plenty of room there, Horst Felbermeyer, but still you don't often see a Porsche disposing of a Viper under braking quite so easily. Number 1 car here from Chamberlain Engineering, the Anarim and Stephen Watson. The Anarim's been in the car for 3 or 4 laps. Stephen Watson now, the South African driver, in the car for the rest of the session. Extremely amiable young man, been testing, as I mentioned this morning, for Arrows for the last couple of years. Hasn't raced a car at all for the last full 2 seasons. Conrad now is going to help Koroisa push the Marcos into the garage as well. You just can't stop him working, that man. 66, didn't quite make it out of the final corner, did he? It's very, very difficult. You climb, it's a more than 180-degree corner. You climb uphill in the early section. There's a first apex, and then you start to go downhill. The corner goes further and faster downhill, and then starts to tighten up as you make the second apex to exit out onto the pit straight. And the 66 car, the Mack Racing NGT class car of Massimo Frigiero and Paolo Rapetti, firmly beached in the gravel there, which will mean static yellow flags, which probably ought to mean that nobody should really improve their times in the next couple of laps. That will disappoint Mike Hasemans. Here he is. Crossed the line last time, 1:36.1 was his time, still chasing a 1:34.3 from the morning, so he's got some work to do. Plenty of Spanish marshals trying to push the 66 car out of the gravel as the 25 car continues on its way here at the circuit of the Community of Valencia. Final qualifying session for the opening round of the FIA GT Championship for 2000. And these cars, the GT2 machines, as they have so far in the last couple of seasons dominated the championship, run by the Orica team, the Works Vipers, now in private hands. This is an ex-Orica car, as are a large number of them, either built by, most of them, in fact, I think probably all of them, built by Orica at one stage or another as the official Viper builder, and most of them raced by Orica at one stage or another as well. Certainly the GTSRs, the lightweight cars, and goes past one of the Belmondo racing cars. That's the 10 machine out there again, giving its drivers track time and track experience with the car. Neither of them very experienced either here at Valencija or in the car. Guy Martinol and Jean-Claude Lanier. The 25 car, Hasemans and Hart, 1:33.8 on their last lap, and that has been an improvement on their previous best of 1:34.3, and that has put them up into second place. So the red Viper that the camera's not quite looking at has now moved in between the two Mr. Storms. That means Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter's number 14 car is on top of the timesheets now, but the Peter Hardman and Nicholas Springer car is in second place. The car they share with Spanish driver Carlos Palau, and I do anticipate that we may see the return of the listers. Both cars have got a set of soft tyres to play with, and I think play will be the operative word. So they are in second place now in the 25 car. The Hasemans and Hart pairing in their first race together in this championship, in their first race together in this car, in their first race together with this new team they've set up, looking to be a very potent combination already, and upsetting an apple cart is certainly high on their list of agendas for this weekend. Really looking very much in the position to stamp themselves as front-running contenders here in the FIA GT Championship for the year 2000. The car sport team from Holland, and we go now to the other red car. There in the right-hand side of the corner you can see the slightly taller figure of Jean-Denis Delatraz and team owner and boss Fabien Girouard. Delatraz with the helmet, so it was he, I would assume, that beached it, and Fabien Girouard, who was in the garage at the time. There you were looking at the Ferrari team, the first racing project, with their brand new Ferrari 550 Millennio, 550 Maranello GT car that they are homologating. Much anticipated, the debut of that car, and unfortunately we haven't seen quite as much of it as we had hoped in this qualifying session. Unfortunately for them, we haven't seen quite as much of it as well. They've only done 15 laps in total in the two qualifying sessions, and some of the cars have done twice that and a considerable number more as well. So this is being regarded very much as a test session for them, and I don't think they really needed to test its ability to surf gravel. That's clearly a problem there. The team, the first to enter a brand new car via the new FIA homologation rules. Previously, all these cars, the GT2 Porsches, the GT3 Porsches, the Chrysler Vipers, the Marcos even, have been built and homologated by factories. Even if Marcos has always been a tiny operation and the cars are being built by Core-Oyster as they have been, all the others have been factory sanctioned and sponsored cars, let's say. But with the Ferrari and with the new Lamborghini Diablo that it is hoped will appear, as red flags come out around the racetrack for car recovery, I imagine, of the 66 machine. We can't see any other reason. The cameras haven't picked up any other good reason why we should see a red flag. The session being temporarily halted then. Lost the train of thought completely there as I was craning to look out of our windows here in the Erie. I can see actually that, as I predicted, Julian Bailey has come out on course in the 14 Lister Storm to try and put the Hasemans and Hart car more firmly back in its place. They are first and second. Hasemans and Hart's Viper in second place. Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter's car, which will flash across the screen. Yeah, there it goes. In a moment or two, I was going to say there it was. They are on top of the timesheets at the moment. Well, that car's been there since about third or fourth minute of the session, so that can't be the reason for the red flags. The 66 car was being well towed out of the gravel, so that can't be the reason for the red flags. But we will bring you some idea of what's going on, hopefully, after the break. We're going to go away for a commercial break in a moment or two, for a word from our sponsors, and I will yell on the radio to race organiser, find out what's going on. So that's the way we are then. We've got around another 15 minutes or so of this session yet to go, and Julian Bailey, Peter Hardman still yet to fire their final bolts in the Lister Storms. Could it yet be a Lister front row? Find out after the break when we rejoin the action here in Valencja. Welcome back to Valencja, where the track is silent. Qualifying has not yet finished. There's a red flag out. The standing as you see here, well, this is the car that's on pole position, running behind at the moment, and that is Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter's car. That hasn't really been seriously threatened, but the car that's in second place, Mike Hasemans and David Hart, the two Dutch drivers, have improved from third to second, and both Lister Storms were just on their way out to go and see what they can do in the cool of the late afternoon here at the circuit of the community of Valencja on their soft race rubber. Well, further down you can see that the fastest of the GT3R cars, well in there among the GT2 cars, that's the Hoffer Riccitelli car, the RWS Motorsport car, Hans-Jörg Hoffer and Luca Riccitelli, and they are the fastest of the NGT cars. And second in that class, or they were the fastest in fact, Bouchou and Gousselar are 12th fastest, so they're quicker than them in the NGT class. Third in that class is O'Rourke and Sugden in the EMCA car, run by Michael Cain's operation, the EMI sponsored car. And here you can see the car that is second fastest at the moment, and I do think that they probably have shot their bolt in terms of what pace they've got. In the background there you can see the start of what has actually brought out the red flag. The 66 white Porsche, the Mack racing car, which is in the NGT category, went off into the gravel some 10 or 12 laps ago. They tried to push it forward out, and that didn't work. They got a tractor in and tried to drag it backwards out, and that was working well until it dug itself so deep into the gravel, being pulled backwards, that it actually ripped the tow hook off the car. Oops. So they've had to take an excavator in and lift it out with a shovel. We're anticipating going to a green flag situation on the racetrack again in a minute or two, and that will put us 5 or 6 minutes behind schedule. 17 minutes and 04 it says on the clock when it stops of the session, which I think is time remaining as opposed to time run. That wouldn't seem right to me at all. So we have around 17 minutes left to run. Here you can see the all-new circuit of the community of Valencja. As I said earlier on, just some 10 or 12 kilometres outside of the city of Valencja itself. And this brand new facility welcoming the opening round of the FIA GT Series. Cars coming back out onto track then for the final 16 and a half minutes of the second qualifying session for the opening round of the FIA GT Championship. Confusing myself. First out, Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter's car. Julian Bailey at the helm on soft tyres, or softer Michelin tyres, on his Lister Storm. Second, and only just recently gone into second place, the Mike Hasemans and David Hart car. And in third place, it's the second of the Lister Storms of Nicholas Springer, Peter Hardman, and Spanish driver Carlos Palau. Looks like teething problems underneath the G-Force car there. Pair of these yellow cars with their raft of motor industry sponsors. Slick 50, of course, the engine treatments, Rain-X, the windscreen clearing people, Pennzoil, the oil company, and their regular raft of companies aboard. Just a glance at the helmet there, looked as though Julian Bailey might have decided to give Jamie Campbell-Walter a bit of a fast one. No. It was the blue on his visor that was throwing me there. Julian Bailey said he wouldn't give Jamie any go with the soft tyres because he enjoys it too much himself, and true to his word, out he has come. He said that he would come out and really try and lay one down if the Red Viper went quicker. And Mike Haseman's and David Hart's car has gone quicker in Mike's hands just before the stoppage, and now with about half the field already going out onto the track, Julian Bailey on pole position already. Let's see what he can do now. Let's see if he can really lay the marker completely out of anybody's reach. That will be moral victory number 1 for the Lister team. Right behind him, one of the trio, the Paul Belmondo Racing Vipers. It's the number 12 car, the fastest of the lot, in fact, driven by Belmondo himself and Vincent Voss, who's got plenty of Viper experience in this championship from last year. Two of them nose to tail as they go across the line, and Julian is going to run into slower cars as he comes round into the first of the tighter infield circuit sections. There's a GT3R and a GT2 Porsche a couple of corners ahead of him, squabbling away with each other. The 77 Hoffer and Riccatelli car in the NGT class, and another of the GT2 cars trying to get around him, but Julian is a while from them yet. He may still get a clearish lap here. See how closely the 12 car is staying with him. Julian with the headlights on. Down now into the right-hander. This is about the lowest corner on the circuit, and starting to pick up speed as he comes parallel with the pits but in the opposite direction. And to give you an idea, that's third and fourth gear stretched down to third gear for turn 10 there. And then they go into this tight section that brings them back out onto the start-finish straight. Second gear, final corner, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, as he crosses a line, potentially snatching it. And then into the braking area, fourth, into the first turn. Royce's car being readied again, and I think it unlikely the Dutchman would be sitting in the car making adjustments to the windscreen strip if he wasn't going to go out and drive, so we may yet see him popping out again for another look. This is the Kaufman and Wallach car. Michel Kaufman and Bob Wallach, very experienced pair. Very few people more experienced in Porsche or sports car racing than Bob Wallach. And the Fighting and Motorsport team really very late on the boil this weekend. They really didn't do any running at all on Friday, and precious little in this morning's session as well. They were so busy trying to chase a setup, and so they're a little bit, well, what can we do? We're just going to have to get the setup sorted and work through this qualifying session. Well, we were following Julian Bailey earlier on. He hasn't gone quicker yet, but I can tell the G-Force crew watching on their TVs, probably at Thruxton or at home in their factory, that one of their cars has gone off into the barriers, and that may well be the one that we saw being ready to go out a moment or two ago. Last one across the line was 51, the Smith and Neugarten car, and that was... no, that one I think may still be moving. I'm not quite sure. Unfortunately, all the drivers in their bright yellow overalls, very hard to identify. I'm looking right across the circuit at him. We can't see him. The cameras haven't picked him up yet. He's gone off at the entry to turns 10, 11, 12 sequence, which is the long final set of corners. So back to Bob Wallach's car there, as he's going to catch a pair of GT3R machines. They really have had very little running at all in that Fighting and Motorsport car, and they've got plenty of work to do. Oh dear, he's not going to find a way through there either, is he? But Wallach in the pits. And the free car with Wolfgang Kaufmann at the helm. I didn't call him Wolfgang just earlier, did I? I came up with some other bizarre name. Wolfgang Kaufmann it is anyway, no matter what I might have said earlier. He was sharing with Bob Wallach, and he was looking a little under pressure at lunchtime, just purely because he wanted to get some time on the racetrack, and they really hadn't had very much. So he's feeling the need, not necessarily for speed, but for a setup at least, which they have been chasing quite a lot. They started with a 6-speed gearbox on Friday, found very quickly indeed it was much too short geared, so that was the end of that session. And then they did the first session this morning, the second session on Friday rather, with a long geared 6-speed gearbox, of which they only used 5 speeds because 6 was so far over geared that they really couldn't use it. It was a real Le Mans style gearbox, so that came out fairly quickly, and that was the end of that session. And in qualifying this morning they went back to the short 6-speed gearbox and just elongated 5th and 6th gear, put in taller 5th and 6th gears, and they now got something that is quite squirty in the short sections, and actually doesn't run a danger of blowing the engine up before it gets to the end of the main straight. So they're a little bit better in terms of the drive of the car, but still really hunting a setup. The G-Force Pennzoil car that we still haven't seen from the cameras, which has gone off, is now being towed away, and there is the crew. This enlarged and expanded G-Force operation, first time in Europe, and 3 wide across the line they come. Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter's time from this morning. Julian Bailey has beaten that, incidentally. Didn't see him doing it, and didn't notice it moments or two ago, but he has gone quicker from 1:33.827 this morning to 1:33.635, and the Hazeman's car, the red Viper we were looking at earlier, second fastest, 1:33.856. So there's 2 tenths between them. In third place, the Springer and Hardsman Lister Storm, still with its time from this morning of 1:34.2. There you see the Hoffa and Riccatelli car being passed by the Belmondo Viper. Hoffa and Riccatelli second fastest rather, in the NGT category. Still 8 minutes of the session to do something about that. Well, here is another car that we haven't seen an awful lot of. Franz Conrad was in the pits chatting to Jürgen von Gartzen. It's von Gartzen still at the helm of the car, the number 5 machine, and gone, for the moment at least, are those familiar Conrad colours with that mid-blue along the bottom, and then the kind of turquoise colour, which is always teamed with a predominantly white body shell. Raft of sponsors come on board for this particular car for the FIA GT Championship with Franz Conrad's team, and as you can see, the blue and yellow colours of Hella adorning it, and Bosch, and so the colour scheme has changed, like a large percentage of the cars in the field running on the Dunlop tyre, and so they, like the others, have just one choice of tyre here. We saw the Racing Box Viper go past it. That's the predominantly red and white machine you can see flashing around, car number 21. Haven't seen much of them in this session. Luca Capellari, Gabriele Monteuzzi and Raffaele Sangiolo, and they are currently lying in 11th place, so a not unrespectable time. They in fact are just behind the Conrad and von Gartzen car on the timesheets, and that time 1:14.758, some way from being an improvement on their 1:40.758 and 1:47.758. I'm reading 47 as 14, I'm sorry. Some way for an improvement on their 1:36.9 of this morning, never mind their 1:36.6 of this afternoon. So I may be talking complete nonsense, but they're clearly driving quicker this afternoon than they did earlier. That last lap, not one of their quicker ones. As you can see, he allowed the Racing Box Viper past him, so having a little cruise to bring a bit of life back into the tyres, or just to allow them to cool down a little. And there in the background you just saw the yellow Pennzoil car being towed away. No sign of that now, as he goes past the 7 car, the Proton competition car of Gerald and Christian Reed. then he's coming through the long, tight, right-handed turn 8, turn 9 sequence down the short straight. That'll be fourth gear they snatch there, then third for turn 10, back up to fourth as they accelerate through here. Turn 11, very long, and now tightens and right down to second gear as they come out onto the start-finish straight, accelerating up through second, third, and fourth gear. Yes, he's waving vigorously behind him over his shoulder at the Racing Box Viper. And the Viper goes past his lap in the Porsche, really spoilt by a much slower cruising Viper through turns 11 and 12. Well, here's the Ferrari back out again. First really good chance to enjoy a look at this car in this afternoon sunshine. And the 550 Maranello Racer, being developed by GT Racing Development. This is the first and so far only 550 Maranello. First racing Fabien Gillois and Jean-Denis Delatraz. Cranked up the rear wing in this morning's session, and that gave them some rear end grip, or more rear end grip, to stop them power sliding the car quite so prodigiously through the corners. And Fabien Gillois was saying, we're going to try and build a splitter during the break between the two sessions and see if we can get a bit more grip on the front end as well. Well, looks and sounds gorgeous. Of course, the traditional scarlet of Ferrari. No Scuderia badges, you see, of course, because it is not an official Ferrari works entry. It's very much a non-factory effort. It's the first of the cars to be developed under the new FIA homologation routine, where you can develop a car for racing, whether the factory encourage you or not, indeed whether the factory want you to or not, I guess, and then go and get it homologated by the FIA, as long as you can build some road cars afterwards. And the Marcus road car, the new Mantara LM600 transaxle version of the car, is here at the circuit, the first of those cars, as we see once more the need for increasing track time in the number 10 Viper, as either Guy Martinol or Jean-Claude Lanier leaves another set of squirrely black lines on the track. Well, here comes the Ferrari across the line. 1:38.221 their best, 13.5 seconds off pole. This is their first fast lap out of the pits after their last off, so plenty more laps to come for them. In the pits, the Chamberlain team edging their number 1 Viper back into the garage. Their day's work is done with that car. The number 2 car, it's in the barriers. Well, it's up against the tyre wall at any rate. The Tony Seiler and Walter Brunn car that Tony Seiler spun this morning. And I think that may well be Walter Brunn, the Swiss former slot machine magnate, owner of his own racing team, of course, one of the doyens of sports car racing in the 956, 962 era, one of the real stalwarts of the Group C era, and a man who's now making his racing return after the disaster for him personally and financially and in sporting terms that was Euro Brunn's entry into Formula 1. So picking up again with the Ferrari, coming down now into the tight infield section out of turns 6 and 7 down into 8 and 9. There's the Lister Storm crew. Seem to be enjoying their afternoon sunshine as well. The mechanics there, not much work to do for them. This is the other Scarlet car out on track, the Hasemans and Hart Viper. Carsport Holland is the team that runs it. And we swap back to have a look then at the Ferrari. The Hasemans Hart car still splitting the Vipers, the Listers rather, and Belmondo and Voss fourth and second best of the Vipers in their 12 car. Boyser and Van in fifth place in the Marcus, and the best of Hugh Chamberlain's Vipers in sixth position with Nianarim and Stephen Watson. They've kept their noses clean, they've done the running, had a misfire in the morning qualifying session, that's been engineered out, and just trying to see if that's Jean-Denis Delatraz at the wheel of the Ferrari. I think it might actually have been Fabien Gillois after Delatraz beached it earlier on. I think it was Fabien Gillois having 2 or 3 attempts at getting it through that particular corner. Meanwhile, in the dying moments, so we've got about a minute left for Julian Bailey to do something here on his last run on tyres. Car's now on its hot lap. Its last lap was the lap out of the pits. And Julian Bailey pushing on as the track largely empties to see if he can push a little bit harder on his tyres and get a bit more out of that medium Michelin rubber that he's got on, the softer of the pair of compounds they've chosen to use here. We're going to start the race on the hard tyres that he scrubbed in this morning's session. And that may not even be Julian, that might even be Jamie Campbell-Walter having a quick run. Let's see if we can have another little butchers. If you can make out a blue strip around the chin piece of the helmet, then it's Jamie. If it looks predominantly white, it's Julian. A bit hard to tell with the evening sunshine, I'm afraid. And I can't even blame 14-inch black and white monitors, so I've actually got a half-decent TV monitor here in Valencija to look at. Anyway, time runs out, and no improvement there. 1:33.635. No, indeed. Timing screen very confusing. 1:35.262 that was, so it was no improvement anyway. And the first car over the line after the checkered flag as he slows down definitively. Still can't tell. Too many shadows. Well, there, I can tell that here it is Jamie Campbell-Walter. There is Julian Bailey at the back of the shot there. Lawrence Pierce with the headset on. And it did look a little bit like Jamie Campbell-Walter's helmet, and confirmation when you see Bailey on the pit wall that clearly it was. So Jamie Campbell-Walter just having a last final run to have some fun on their softer race rubber. That's not the tyre they intend to use in the race, certainly not the tyre they intend to start the race on. They're going to use the harder of the Michelin tyres. But there are 2 stops in this race, so the strategy may change depending on how the temperatures go in the tyres during their first run. So this is the car then that finishes the session on pole position, where it was, where it started. Improvement by 0.2 of a second by Julian Bailey to keep him there. He was never surpassed by Mike Hasemans in the 25 Viper, but he came very close indeed. The Hasemans Hart car is going to be a real thorn in the side. It splits the 2 Lister Storms on the timesheets, and undoubtedly the Listers are going to battle not just the Hasemans and Hart car, but also the Belmondo Vipers and the Core Oyster Marcos, and no doubt the Chamberlain Vipers as well, as long as the all-Swiss pairing of the number 2 car can stop throwing it into the gravel. Well, that's it then for our final qualifying moments here at Valencija. Join us live tomorrow for the race. So we're off now to the second of the qualifying groups for the opening round of the Motocross World Championships in Portugal. Join Jack Bernicle in a moment or two after Sports Centre. And that's about it from Valencija. Just to remind you that we will be racing live tomorrow, and you will be able to pick us up. Don't forget, whatever you do, and I will hope not to do the same myself, that the clocks spring forward an hour overnight tonight in Europe and indeed in the UK, so you'll have to set your watch forward an hour before you go to bed, otherwise you'll be completely out of kilter all weekend. We will try and keep you up to date with the happenings in GT racing across Europe, because of course the World Sports Racing Cup is, or something of that ilk, is in Barcelona, just down the road from us, or an hour or so down the road from us. And the British GT Championship kicks off in Thruxton as well tomorrow afternoon. So if you're not going out, make sure you're with us. There is not the Mediterranean, I'm afraid. That's a little man-made lake in the middle of the circuit, but we will be going back down to the city of Valencija on the Mediterranean coast here in the southeast corner of Spain for the evening. Join us tomorrow then, live for the opening round of the FIA GT Championship for 2000. Fine weather and hopefully fine racing in prospect here at the circuit of the community of Valencija. From the production team here and from our crew in Europe, in Paris, from me, Martin Haven, it's goodbye.